Hello everyone and welcome to the walkthrough of the week 5 lab beginning JavaScript. This should go over the content from the lecture for week 5. I apologize if you hear some kind of droning in the background. My air conditioner is kicking on and I don't know if my mic's picking it up. But here we go. Let's get started. Let's go. Alright. So, step 1, download all necessary files. Save them in a folder called Week 5 Last Name. Alright. Ultimately, when you guys see this, it's going to look a little different. 1, because I'm looking at the teacher view. 2, because this will be filled out. And 3, because it'll be published. But it's downloading my files, so let's go here. Did it download my files? There we go. Alrighty. So, I've got my week 5 zip folder here. You'll notice. Ignore the files down here. Week 5 zip. I did not actually extract it. So I gotta do that by what I'm just gonna do is create a new folder. So we're gonna do new folder. We're going to do week 5 Baker. No, I can't even spell my own name. Baker. And then if you're on a Windows machine, what you can do is just drag and drop to extract. There you go. Copied it over. You can also hit extract all and then choose where to extract it to, but I like drag and drop. Okay, so I've got my files here. So for this particular one, I wanted to show you what it's going to look like when we are done. So, alright, so I'm going to enter a tax rate of 0.5. I'm going to enter a shipping threshold of 10. And what's going to happen is we've got our lovely pictures here. We've got our price, our amount, our number. So basically this is how many they're buying, the price, and then it times that, multiplies it, and gives us. And then we've got our tax in here, which was a lovely 0.5% tax, which is insane. So it's half of what the subtotal is. And then our shipping threshold we set at 10. So if it's more than $10, they don't get charged shipping. So they did not. So this is what we're going to end up with. So let's see what we have right now. So I'm going to bring back up the canvas. And the first thing we're going to look at is the data.js and I'm actually going to look at the HTML file as well. Okay. So we're going to open data.js, edit with Notepad. And then I'm going to look at the HTML file as well. Because when you're working with JavaScript, you got to match things front end, back end. So you got to make sure that you're kind of keeping an eye on what things are called and what classes are there and all of that good stuff. Okay, so we've got that open. I'm going to snap this to one side, grab my lab for the other. Alright, examine the data file data.js, which is what we have here. So what we have here is a constant called cart. This is the array. So we're doing array literal notation because we've got the square brackets here. But we've created a constant array called cart with these in it. We've got the first item of the array is an object with the properties of product, with the properties of title, file name and price, and quantity. And then we've got another one, the view of the house in Delft, and then the woman reading the letter. I think these are all Vermeer paintings, but I'm not sure. So we've got an array here with 1, 2, 3 items in it, 3 objects, and within those, each of the objects has 2 objects in it, and within the product object, there are 3 properties. And we will be going over objects in our week 6 lecture, so don't stress too much about knowing what an object is. Alright, so that's our data file. I'm also going to take a look at our HTML file. Let's just close that one out. Okay, so right now we have the same thing as our arrays here, but they are hard-coded in. And we don't want that because we want to be able to set the shipping dynamically, and we want to be able to set the tax dynamically, right? That's what we saw in the beginning. We entered in on the alerts the tax and the shipping. So let's get to that. So we're going to open the JavaScript file called functions.js. Okay. So let's do that. JavaScript. Also, this is functionally what websites look like when they're laid out. You have your HTML file here, and then you have a folder for your JavaScript, your images, and your CSS. That's the best way to organize. Okay, so we're opening up functions.js. Boop. Alright. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to define a function called calculate total. It says create and define in this instance mean the same thing, and I'm breaking this down into as tiny as steps as I can. So the way that you create a function is you use the word function, okay, and then the name, calculate total. Capitalization is important here. You don't have to name it the exact same thing that I name it in terms of like whether or not you do a capital T, but you gotta be consistent. Alright. And then we don't have any parameters, so we're just using open close parentheses. Oh, wait. We do have parameters. Aha. So we've defined the function here. This is our basic function. Doesn't have anything in it. Okay. That is passed a quantity and price. These are our parameters. These are what we pass in. Now remember, from our lecture, we do not have to explicitly say what type they are. They would be ints, but we don't have, actually they'd be floats, but we don't have to put that in. So quantity and price. All right, so it's passed those two and returns their product, which means multiply them together, right? So the way that we return something is we type return, and then we have our 2 parameters. So we want quantity times price. Always end a line in a function or a line in JavaScript that is not a function with a semicolon. Okay, you've written your first function. Great job. So we have created a function called calculate total that takes 2 parameters, quality and price, and takes those 2 and returns their product. So times them together, right? All right. The next thing we're going to do is create a function called output cart row. So function output cart row, and then so this is our parameters area, this is our function area between the brackets. Okay, so we've created a function that has the following signature. Basically what that means is it needs to look like this. You could just copy and paste it. Item total. So function output cart row, between the parentheses, what does that mean? It is, again, taking two parameters, item and total. Now, we have not said in this step what to do within that function yet. Okay? All right. Here's where it starts getting hairy. But it's fun. It's going to be really fun. Okay. So, implement the body of this function. What that means, we're going to put it here. It should use document write to display a row of the table using the past data. So here's where our HTML file is incredibly helpful. Okay? Use the toFixed method to do number variables to display two decimal places. Basically what that does is that it displays it like this, where it's got the decimal 00 on it. Okay. All right. So basically, what we're wanting to do is end up with this, but using JavaScript. Actually, we want the whole row, right? Okay, so stay with me. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this whole thing, and I'm going to pop it down here so I can see what I'm doing. So the way that document write works is that you actually just literally write, and I'm tabbing in so that I can keep track of my stuff. Document write, and then you open your parentheses. You can either use a single quote or a double quote, but then you start to write what you want to go there. So for our first row, we want it to say table row, right? We want to create that row. TR. Okay. Okay. And then close your parentheses. Semicolon. Now we know that we're going to need, so let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the closing. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because I'm lazy. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the closing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Aha. Oop. We don't know what's going to go in these yet. So these are going to just create blank lines. But we do know that our last line should be the closing table or table row, right? Okay. All right. So this next part is going to be a little bit non-intuitive. I'll use that word. The book is very non-intuitive when it comes to breaking stuff down. So what we need to do is get it to grab this. We're going to do this one first. Fill in this area right here with what is right here. Okay? So what we do, we have our document right here. We need to have our TD. Actually, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and grab this. Here's the thing about copy and pasting versus typing stuff out. As long as you are copying and pasting from something that is correct, you have less errors. Because if you sit there and type everything out, you have to make sure that you type it out correctly. If you copy and paste, again, as long as the copy and paste was correct in the first place, you're less error prone. Okay, so the way that you do this right here, I'm actually going to change these to single quotes just so that it is going to match the output. You can have single quotes in a double quote or double quotes in a single quote, but if this was all single quotes, it's going to read this as a closed thing. It's going to stop right there. So if this is, the source was a single quote right here, see how that turned black and is no longer part of the whole thing? That's why. Okay, so double quotes. And then what we need to do is we're gonna leave that, and let's see here. Let's go. Okay, so this is a product title. So you notice how in the lecture we had for year in years? We're going to do the same kind of thing here. Since we're bringing in an item, that's going to be our WR, our year. And what you need to do, remember our lecture, this is concatenating a string. So it's mushing two strings, well, in this case, 3 strings together to make one big string. I talk with my hands and I just smacked my mic. Sorry if that was sonically awful. Okay. So I'm going to do plus, and remember in JavaScript, it does not matter. Item dot product dot title. Okay. So that is saying when we run this, we're going to grab an item, and then from that item, we're going to grab the properties of product and title. So it's going to go through product, title, grab the first one, go through the next one, product, title, grab that one. Okay, make sense? And then we need to close this out. Because right now, what it would output is, your opening table data, your table cell, the image source, and then the title, but then it would stop there. So we don't have this left. We need to get that in there, right? So I'm going to copy this. I'm Control C, or you can go to right click and copy. And then we need to add a plus sign again, our single quote to say that we're adding another string, paste that in there, and your single quote. All right, so breaking it down again. We're creating a string. It's going to write this string here, which is a block of text, creating a table cell, creating an image source, and then we're dynamically, so we're going out and grabbing an item from our array that we're going to pass through, grabbing the product from it, and then the title. Okay? And then we're closing it out by adding together another string and then closing the table data, right? So we're going to do the same thing with our next row. So again, I'm going to change these to single quotes. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab this, the table data. And now this is our title, right? Or sorry. Aha. All right. We need our file name, not our title. Okay. I apologize. This is the file name. Not the title. Now, the other thing is that you may have noticed we're missing this. So if we look at the images here and then look at our data, it doesn't have that images in there. So it's going to fail, right? It's not going to show our images. So we need to have it add that in. So I'm just going to pop in images and then the /. Okay. So now it's going to pop out the image source, images, and then add in the file name, not the title. File name. I did an oopsie. Okay. The next one, we're going to go back down and do the same kind of thing. So for this one, we just need the table data opening, the title, and then the table data closing. So we've got that, the table data, add a plus sign. We're going to do the same kind of thing. Item.product.title. And then another plus sign. And then our single quotes. And then we just put our closing table data tag in there. All right. So this next one, if we look at our table, is the number, right? So that's our quantity, yeah? So we go over to our data. So looking at our array here, instead of doing product.quantity, all we need to do is item.quantity. So same kind of thing. I'm gonna change these to single quotes. And then we're going to do our opening table data. And then our plus sign. And then it's still an item. But instead of product this time, we're gonna do quantity. Okay? And then another plus sign. Got our single quotes here, and we're going to close out our table data. Now, here we go. So the next one I'm betting is price. Yep, price. Oh ho ho. So we need to go over here to our data. Now we're back in the product array again, right? Or sorry, the product object properties. So we're gonna go back. And then we're going to, I am just gonna grab this. Actually, I'm gonna make it even easier. I'm gonna grab this, pop it in there. So instead of a product title, we want our product price. So what this row is doing is it's creating that table cell and then going through and grabbing an item, product, price. Make sense? Okay, so the last one is our amount, and we're not going to do that yet. Because, see here, to replace the 3 table cart rows in the original. No, we are going to do that. Okay. So this one is a little bit different still, right? Because we have to grab our function up here. To get the amount, we need to have our total, yeah? And for our total, we need to put in our quantity and then our price. Okay. And then, oh, you know what? I even highlighted it, guys. Oops. We need to make sure you're doing the to fixed on it. The way that you add that in is just the to blah blah. To the end of price, you just add in to fixed. My goodness, there we go. And then it's a function, and we want it to 2 decimal places. My number lock is not on. 2 decimal places. So that third row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row should look like this. So it's going to go through and grab our item, grab the product of that item, grab the price of it, and make sure that it is set to 2 decimal places. So now we need to do the amount, right? So the way that you do that is we're going to create a couple of, we're going to use our function, right? I just want to make sure it's not in there. Okay. Gonna grab the thing. And then we're gonna pop that in there. And we're going to do our total. Calculate total. Okay. So to do that, we don't need the item, price, all of that. We just need the word total. Because for this, we are passing through the item, which is going to be from our array. This is going to be our items. And then we're also passing through the total, which is going to end up, spoiler alert, being our function right here. The output from that. Okay? And then total row. Alright, and then the next thing that we need to do, bear with me just one moment, is we need to replace the 3 cart table rows in the original markup with a JavaScript loop that repeatedly calls this output cart function. Put this loop within the project.js file, and then put the script tags for it within the body element, the table body element. So we're going to break this down again, right? So the first things first, we need to create a loop within the chapter 8 project file, which we have not opened yet. Make sure to save. And we're going to open this up. They've already given us the tax rate and the shipping. Okay. Add loop and other code here. So, what we need to do is a couple of things. First thing we need to do is create our loop. So I'm going to create a for loop, right? easiest way, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to write out the loop, and then we're going to fill in the stuff. So for, and then we got our parentheses, and then we got our brackets, okay? I'm going to go ahead and just bump that down. What goes in here, there are two ways you could do it. The first one is we could do it the iterative way. So I'm going to type it out, but don't type it out on yours, okay? This is just an example. I'm going to do let I equal 0. We're going to do I is less than cart was the name of our array dot length, and then we're going to do I plus plus. So that is one way to do it. We create a variable named I, we set it to 0. We say that as long as I is less than the number of items, the length of the array of cart, because our data cart. And then after you're done with the thing, add 1 to I, do this thing, right? So that is one way you can do it. Incredibly valid way to do it. However, you can do it easier. So this is where we go back to our lecture and think about year in years. So what we're going to do is create a variable named item, because remember, right, we're already using items. Item, we're going to pass that through of, because it's not in, even though you'd think it'd be in, but cart. So create a variable named item, and then for each item in the cart array, do this thing, right? So the next thing we need to do is we need to set what our total is, right? Because we have our total here, but we don't know what that is. And remember, if you put you pass something through and it doesn't have anything, it's going to error out because we didn't set a default. Okay, so let's create a variable named total. And well, we need the total to be equal to something, right? We need the total to be, oh wait, we already have this function here that does it for us, right? So we're going to call this for our variable. So we're setting total equal to calculate total, which is our function. But we need to remember it takes two things in it. It takes a quantity and a price, right? Well, since we're using that item array, we're going to do item.quantity. Because remember, we can look here and see that item.quantity, or we can look here in our array and see that it's just the top level, right? And then we want to pass through our price. So the way that we did price is we can look at our function here, item.product.price, right? So we're going to do the exact same thing, item.product.price. And then we need to end it with a semicolon, because that's how we end our lines. All right, so now we have set the total, and we need to output it, right? So because we have our function output cart row here, we need to call that. So let's copy that. And then we need to pass through. What do we need to pass through? We need to pass through our item and total. Okay? Item, total. Oop. Okay. So we have a for loop, and it's saying for each item in the array cart, we're going to set the total of that item to calculate total, which is our function here, quantity times price. We're setting the quantity to the item, that specific item in the array, the quantity of it, and the price to that specific item in the array, the price of it. And then we're saying, well, now that total's set, we're going to output the cart row with the item of the cart that we're on, and then the total that we just set. Make sense? Cool. All right. So that is how you call that function, that function repeatedly. The next thing we need to do is we need to add the script tag reference within the table body. So what we do for that is we're going to end up hopping back over to our HTML file, and we're going to add that in there, right? All right. And it wants it in specifically the table body element. So I don't know if you guys remember, but it is in our lecture how you put in a script tag. It's also in our book. So the way that we do a script tag is we open up our tag, and then we do script, and then we do source, kind of like an image tag, and then we're going to point it to our file. Now, our file does not live in our main folder, right? So we need to do the same thing that we did with our images, and we need to add that reference. So it's in the file called JS. So we're going to do JS / and then the name of the file, which is the one that it wants us to do is this chapter 8 project1.js. I'm just gonna grab it, copy, paste, and then we close that up. And then since we're not actually well, we need it to say what type it is. So this is not something that was in the lecture, but it helps. So we're going to tell it that it's a JavaScript file. So it's a file that is text and then JavaScript. You see up here, these two already have it. Without those, some browsers, it won't realize that it's a JavaScript file and it just won't work. And then the same thing as up here, we're going to close out our script tag because we're not actually writing anything in between it. All right. All right, so we've done that. We're going to save. We're going to save. Everybody saved. Also, Notepad++ has this neat thing up here. It looks like a bunch of floppy disks. Save all. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is calculate the subtotal, tax, shipping, and grand total using JavaScript. Okay. So again, this isn't explicitly set out, but we got to kind of think about it, okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to create a function to calculate tax, because tax, well, let me start with subtotal. Subtotal is our total before tax and shipping, right? So, we basically created that already. Then we need to create our tax. So what is our tax? Well, our tax is going to be our tax rate times our subtotal. Okay? So we're going to be hopping back and forth between a couple of things. We're going to be declaring some constants first, and then we're going to be creating the functions that go in those constants. Or we're going to create the functions first and then the constants. Either way, it doesn't really matter. The biggest thing is that we have to realize that we have to create functions to be able to multiply things together. And then we have to call those functions, right? Okay, so let's do this first. So we've got our functions file, calculate total here, and we've got output cart row here. So I'm going to create one that's, let's see here. We've already got total, so subtotal, so we don't need that. So let's do one called, we need to make sure it's a function. We're going to call it calculate tax. Makes sense, right? Because that's what we're calculating. And then for doing that, we need to pass two parameters through it, right? So to calculate tax, you need to know the tax rate. So we'll do and then the subtotal, right? So we need the subtotal and the rate. And then how do we find the tax? Well, same thing as how we found our total. It's going to be return, because we're sending out a value, subtotal times, which our asterisk is, rate. Okay, so that's our tax. And then we need to do the same thing for our shipping, right? So I bet you can guess the name of that function. Function calculate shipping. And for the shipping, it's going to be a little different, because shipping, if we go back over here to our shipping threshold, what it's basically saying, if you read down here, notice that tax and shipping threshold are input from the user so that you can verify your calculations are working. The shipping amount should be $40 unless the subtotal is above the shipping threshold. Okay? So to figure that out, we need to know the shipping threshold. And we also need to know the subtotal. So let's go back over to our functions here. So we need to know our subtotal. Wow, my hand was way off there. Subtotal. And we need to know our threshold. Okay? Now, this one is not as simple, right? Because you have to put some logic in there. So I'm going to use an if-else statement. So if the subtotal is less, if the subtotal is above the threshold. Okay, so if the subtotal is more than the threshold, do this thing. Else, do this other thing. Now, you could also create a switch statement that takes... so for the switch statement, you would have to create a variable for shipping, and then a case statement for if it's over, and then if it's under. If else in this situation is just easier. So if it is above the shipping threshold, it should be $0. So we're going to return 0. Semicolon. Otherwise, if it's below that, we want to return $40. Or just 40. Okay. And then the last thing we need to do is the grand total. So in our naming consistency, we're going to do function calculate grand total. By the way that I'm writing is called camel case. It's the first word is lowercase, and then the additional words, there's no space in between, but they are capitalized. It just helps you read it a little better. And for this one, we need to know all three. We need to know our subtotal, we need to know our tax, and we need to know our shipping, right? All right. And then for this one, instead of multiplying, what we're going to do is add them all together. So we're going to return subtotal plus tax plus shipping, not shipping. Okay. And then again, semicolon. Okay. So now that we've done that, we need to do a couple of things. So we need to call our calculate tax, we need to call our calculate shipping, and we need to call our calculate grand total. So we're going to do that. We need to make sure that our script is already in there, so we need to put in the other script tags in there, we need to replace those in our file. Okay? Because what this did right here, we can actually take away all of this. That replaced that. So for now, just for funsies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to view in Chrome. I'm going to enter in our tax rate, 0.5, whatever. I'm going to enter in our shipping threshold, 1. Okay. So let's see how we're doing here. Okay, so we have something wrong here. This is good. These are good. And then these are still hard-coded. So let's take a look at our functions here. So file name works. Title works. Quantity works. Why is it adding in an extra one? Haha, I had a typo. Okay. And then the rest of those look good, so I'm going to save. So what I was missing was that closing table data tab, right? Whatever, 0.5, 2, 5. Okay, so now we got it here. And we can check. So 1 times 125 is 125. 1 times 100 is 200. 3 times 75 is 225. So those all work. They look great, right? These are still hard-coded in. So we need to fix that. But we're getting really close. All right. Bring that back up. So how do we add those in? Well, that's a great question. Well, the way that we do that is we add script tags in where they go. And we call the oh, sorry. First thing is we're going to do is add our variables that call our stuff, and then we'll add the script tags for them. So I'm switching over to my Chapter 8 Project 1 JavaScript file. And the first one, just for consistency, I'm going to do tags. And you can do constant, you can do let, either works. But I'm going to do constant because we're not changing these. And then our function was called calculate tax. And through that, we're going to pass through our subtotal. No. Goodness. And our tax rate. Tax rate comes from up here. Oh, but where does subtotal come from? Uh-oh. We need to add in something for that, don't we? So when you're programming, it's a very, like, you don't create huge blocks of stuff at once. You have to go back and forth constantly. So we need to add in something up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable that just sets our subtotal to 0. And it's a let because we're changing it. There we go. Nope, wrong button. And again, white space doesn't matter in JavaScript. You can have as many spaces in there as you want. So this is our default. Let subtotal equal 0. In our for loop here, every time we output that cart row, we need to add that to our total. Or sorry, our subtotal. Okay? So we're going to say subtotal. And you can either do plus total, subtotal equals subtotal plus total, or, which is much easier, you can do subtotal plus equals total. And what that's saying is take the value of subtotal, add total to it, and then set that to subtotal. So now we have our subtotal, right? And I've said the word and I've looked at it so much that it has lost all meaning. All right. So now we're good. So now we can pass that subtotal through our tags. We need to do the same thing with our shipping. So constant shipping. And we're going to do, you guessed it, calculate shipping. And we needed for that, what did we need? So I'm going to look at my functions here. So we needed the subtotal and the threshold. So we're going to pass through that subtotal again. And then we're also going to pass through our shipping threshold. There we go. And then the last one was our grand total. So I'm going to do constant. I'm just going to name it grand, because it doesn't need to be the whole thing. And we're going to do calculate grand total. And then it needs all three, remember? So it's subtotal, tax, and shipping. So I didn't look, but I should have. You got to make sure that they're in the same order. Subtotal, tax, shipping. Okay? Subtotal, tax, shipping. Grand total has to be last because we're setting tax and shipping first. Okay. Okay, so now we've created those. Now we can pass those through. So I'm saving, and then I'm going to hop over to my HTML. Let me bring this up. Okay. So we're going to replace this in each of them. And the way that you do that is you do script tags. But we're actually going to do something in the script tags again. So we're going to do script. And then we're going to tell it to use the function. So this one is subtotal, right? So for our subtotal, our function was subtotal. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then we can do the other with tax and shipping. Because we're telling it to use that chapter 8 thing, the chapter 8 JavaScript. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so it's not showing up there. Okay. That's our old one. You know, what I'm going to do is we're actually going to Okay. Again, some non-lateral thinking here. When this would spit that number out, it would just spit out the number, and we want it to spit it out like this. So we're going to we're going to create another function to, yeah, because there's no document right there. So that's why it's not filling in, right? So let's create a function to document write, and add in the nice little $sign too. So I'm going to say function, currency. And it's going to take a parameter of one thing, like a number. We don't want to do number because that might get confused. Okay, so I'm doing num instead. But you can call it whatever as long as you are consistent with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do document.write. And what we want it to do is have a $sign. And then we don't need a space there. So I'm gonna, and then, so $sign is your string. And then I want it to have the 2 decimal points in there too. So remember from before, we're using our 2 fixed. So it's going to be number, whatever we're passing through. So our number 2 fixed. And we still want it to have 2 decimal places. And then close our parentheses. And there we go. Okay. Bear with me just a moment. I got a message. Okay, cool. So now it's going to actually write into the document, which is the reason it doesn't show up here, right? So we need to call that function and pass our items through it. So let's test it with subtotal, right? So I named the function currency. So we're going to do currency. And then we're going to pass subtotal through it. And we're going to, because we're doing inline JavaScript, you got to still end it with that, right? Semicolon. Whatever, that's fine. Ha ha ha. There we go. Okay, so we got to do the same thing with our tax and our shipping and our grand total. So let's see here, pop that in there, and it's our tax number. Oh, I didn't grab the whole thing. Gotta grab the whole thing. Okay, so this one's gonna be tax. You'll notice when I did it wrong that it was still bolded like that, and that's what we don't want. Okay, and then same thing, and it's gonna be shipping. And then the same thing. And we gotta remember what I called my grand total. Grand. Alright. Not Fran. Grand. Okay. Alright. So, I saved again. I'm going to refresh this page. So, just to test it, I'm going to put in a tax rate of 0. And then I'm going to put a shipping threshold of 1. Not 10, 1. So if we did this right, our tax should show up as 0. And then our shipping should show up as 0. Alright. So we got our subtotal. 200 plus 125 is 325 plus 225 is 550. Our tax we set to 0. Our shipping threshold we set to 1. Since it's above $1, it's not added, and then our grand total is still 55. So let's try it with something else, right? So let's set it to something where it will get charged shipping. So I'm going to set the tax rate to 10%, and then I'm going to set the shipping threshold to 1,000, just like it's in the parentheses there. All right. So now our tax was 10%. 10% of 550 is 55. And it's below that shipping threshold of 1,000. So there's $40 added. So 550 plus 55 is 605 plus 40 is 645. And it's working. So what is the last thing I'm going to do? Well, I'm going to go over to my folder here. I'm going to go to week 5. Baker, and I'm going to go to send to, so right click, send to, and then zip it, and then pop it in my canvas, and that's it. You guys have created so many things. You've created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functions. You created an if-else statement. You wrote JavaScript into your HTML file using both a external script and an inline script tag here. Or sorry, an embedded script right here. You did so much. I'm so proud of you. You also created a for loop and then a bunch of new variables. So go ahead and get that turned in. Please let me know if you have any questions or run into any errors. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to show you. Okay, let's do a test here because I want to show you a thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do console log and then subtotal. You know what? I'm going to put that before the output cart row. So console log subtotal. Because we don't have any errors in our JavaScript right now, but I want to show you how to check if you did. So I'm turning on my inspector. It's set to mobile. We don't need that. And then I'm going to go over here to console. It's blank right now, right? If we had an error, this is where it would show up. So I went over to console right here. Let's do this. We're going to do 0.1. And then 1,000 again. Okay. So, got a couple of things here. This is the first item, the subtotal. It wrote that out in the console. And then it went through and added the next item to it. So that's the new subtotal. And then it went through again. So that's the last subtotal. This is a violation of void using document write. You absolutely should. We are going to learn that in week 7. It's just less secure, right? So that is how to use the console to see, to like debug. Like if I let's see here, let's take that out and then save it, and then okay, so first off, it's broke, right? And then second off, we've got all these errors. So unexpected end of input, basically what that means is you're missing something to end your function. So we can just add that in, because see, it goes all the way down to the page and it doesn't close if you follow it down. So we just need to close that out, right? So use that for debugging. You can also use the console log to debug. But yeah, cool. Have a great week, y'all.